Okay, good. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Well, let's start. Technically, the applied practice experience, which is also called the practicum, which is also called the public health internship, is technically it's a second semester activity. So that means particularly that what we really want you to do is to finish by the end of the second semester. When you start it is up to you, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you should really have a goal to get it done by the end of the second semester. Now, with that said, there's no no hard deadline. There's no consequences if you're late getting it done. But the primary problem becomes the pressure on you to finish everything as you finish the program. And you'll be very busy with other things. So I really recommend that you set up a schedule and keep to it. And that schedule should have you finishing the APE by the end of the second semester. Last year, there were a number of students who were late because the COVID-19 significantly changed what they were going to do. I mean, you know, even now, you really can't go out into the community so easily, right? So, but I think by the second semester, hopefully things maybe be a little easier to do. Now, as I said, it's considered a second semester activity.
Okay, I think waking them up.
At this point, you can get started on it anytime you want, all right? So even though you may or may not want to start it right now, you may very well want to start planning it, organizing it, and if you want to get started with it, go ahead. Okay, just so everybody understands that. What we're going to do is we're going to go through briefly the syllabus. We're going to talk about some of the projects that people have done, but we definitely want to give you time to ask us questions, okay? So maybe half the time or so we'll be doing that. I sent the syllabus out to everybody. Both Alix and Daphne before her have created a very nice report describing what students have done in the past to give you an idea. And you can see the range of activities and some of the organizations. Before I go through the syllabus, just one more point to make. We have tried all sorts of different ways to make this work for students. I think the APE is in many ways the most challenging course to organize because every year, every student has an individual experience. And a few years ago, I actually tried to kind of prearrange experiences for people. You know, I asked them what they wanted to do, and then I went out and set some things up for them. And that was a failure because it turned out not to be what they wanted. It seemed that it's what I wanted them to do. And that's not what I thought, but that's what they thought. And so what we've really chosen to do then is to make it your responsibility. You've got to find this. And you've got to make it work for yourself. Okay. So there's, you know, we've given you a list of things you can do, but you have to decide what you want. You have to find the site. You have to find the supervisor and make it work. Okay. So just so you're aware that, again, we're happy to help you, but ultimately you've got to do this. Okay. So let's go through the syllabus. Okay, so just a second, I'm going to get that going. Okay. Let's see where. Okay. Okay. So everybody sees the syllabus? Yeah. Okay. Good. Just 1 second here. All right. Okay. So one of the first things to say is that this is a what's called experiential learning, and it's distinctly different from a traditional classroom education, right? And one of the things that you need to do is to experience public health, and that's what this should be. So the learning is very informal. It's learning by doing. One of the things you should be doing is trying to compare what you learn in the classroom to actually what you're doing in the APE. So I'm not going to go through the course objectives. You can look at those yourself. Technically, I'm the academic supervisor for the APE, although Professor Green has often very much helped people find sites and advise them. And Manfred, I certainly don't want to exclude you from this. And Alix is very willing to help as well. So ultimately, you need to let me know, however, and you need to make sure that I agree with what you're going to do. And you give me the name of the site supervisor. And if you can do it through Alix, that's fine, but I need to sort of keep the list. So basically what you're doing is you need to identify a site, and you need to identify the person who's going to supervise you on that site. That's the site supervisor. I'm technically the academic supervisor, just to define the terms. What we'd really like for you to do is to join a team, okay? And the idea is that this is supposed to be like a job. Now, for many students, it isn't as structured as a job, but that's the goal, is that it should be like a job, okay? You want to, I'm just going through this. You want to observe, you want to think about what you're seeing, so you're observing, you're reflecting. But item 6 here, you want to become an active member of the team, okay? Let's see if I can do this here. Okay, that's really important because the learning should be active. Now, some people can do it and some people can't, but that word active is one of the goals. And as part of that team, it is desirable for you to actually make a contribution. Now, some people can and some people can't, okay? But that's what you should be doing, is making some kind of effort, like a job, okay? One thing just to explain in item 7, the last sentence, students are not to be involved with clinical medical care of patients. So the university, for insurance reasons and administrative reasons, doesn't want you to have any liability, whether it's nursing or medicine or psychology or counseling. You're supposed to be seeing and being part of that whole process, but not providing individual care for whether it's patients or clients or whatever word you use. Okay. The measure of completion of the APE is hours of effort. So it's 125 to 150 contact hours. Now we define the hours of effort on the APE liberally. So if you're going to do an APE in Haifa, in Hadar, and you take the bus from the university, the bus trip counts as an hour, as hours. If it's half an hour, it counts as half an hour. If you're going to Hadera, then that travel time is counted. When you're writing things up, when you're working at home, whatever activity you do for the APE counts as this contact hour process, okay? I'm going to go through all of this and then we'll have questions, okay? The practicum can be completed either in Israel or in another country. Because it's a global health program, one of our goals is to actually get people to do projects outside of Israel. So we encourage you to do that. We have no money in limited contexts, okay? So if you want to do it, you need to pretty much set it up yourself, okay? Let us know. If you want to go someplace and you really don't have any connections, you can certainly ask us. I mean, let's say somebody wants to go to Nicaragua, and they say, I'd like to go to Nicaragua, Professor Schuster, Professor Green, do you have any connections? I don't, okay? But maybe Professor Green does, who knows, okay? So you can ask us, but it's a lot better to say, come up and say, I've found a program in Nicaragua I'd like to work on. Is it okay? All right. So, and for those of you who don't live in Israel, you can go home, wherever home is, in February and take the month and do it wherever home is. All right. Or you can go someplace else. I mean, your home may be Canada and you want to go to Nicaragua, that's fine. And you have the month of February or whenever that vacation time is to do it, right? As you know, we have, the program is centered on the concept of giving you competencies, making you competent. And for this APE, you're supposed to demonstrate that you've attained 5 competencies. This is one of the accrediting organization's rules, okay? So you've already seen the list of the competencies. You yourself have filled them out. So you'll go back at the end of the APE and report to us on what at least 5 competencies you have enhanced by your experience. Okay. I guess I don't say it here, or I do someplace else in the document, but again, it's 125 to 150 hours. You can split that time among various projects. So you may want to do 2 different things, and one is 50 hours and one is 100 hours. That's perfectly fine, okay? And sometimes students start something that really doesn't work. Well, those hours count, and you can switch to something else and finish. What if you actually are really, really engaged in what you're doing and you want to do more than 150 hours? That's fine. That's volunteer work then. And we encourage you to do volunteer work as well. Okay, so do as much volunteer work as you want. We're going to ask you later in the year if you're doing volunteer work. So you may choose to do more than 150 hours, or you may choose to do the 125 to 150 hours, and then do volunteer work on something else. That's up to you, okay? All right, so what are the assignments? And it's called the portfolio approach. The first is not really quite an assignment, but there is a form that we should, sometimes we forget, but we should send to you and your site supervisor halfway through to just confirm that you're there and that you're doing stuff. It's a very simple form. It's basically asking the site supervisor just to say yes. The student is with us and they're working on something, okay? There are 2 other things you have to do for the practicum, or the APE. The first is a 3-page document that you submit to me or Alix, okay? And it's very simple and should take you maybe 2 hours to do. And that is, you just have to say what you did. You don't have to be analytical. It's not a policy statement. It's just like, at least in the US for children in early school, the first day they're back from summer vacation, the teacher says to them, I want you to tell me what you did this summer, okay? And so the kids will say, well, my family and I went on a vacation, and then I went to the park every day. I mean, all you have to do is report to us what you did during your 150 hours, okay? Again, it's not an analytical document, and it should be very easy for you to write up, okay? Then the second thing that you really have to do, which I'm calling the second product, is a little more complicated. Because you're supposed to be part of a team and you're supposed to be contributing to the advancement of whatever mission the organization has, we would like you to show us an example of the work you've done to help the organization. So some of you will do a presentation to the organization, a PowerPoint. Some of you may develop a patient education tool or a client education tool. Maybe it's a poster. Something that is useful to the organization. If you have to, we say you can submit a log of what you did, okay? I really don't like that particularly. I'd rather see something a little more productive than that. One of the things that some students do is they'll write a 1-page memo to the site supervisor recommending things that could be done better. And that memo can either go to the site supervisor and to me or Alix, or just to us. And if you're uncomfortable sending it to the site supervisor, you write it as a model of what you've done, but you don't have to send it to them. Okay? It's up to you. It depends on what you've done and what your rapport is with them. All right, so how long does it take to do that second product? It can take a few hours. It depends on what you're doing, okay? But the point with this is that it is not a long amount of work on the back end to finish the APE. This is not like the capstone, the ILE, where you have to end with a 20-page paper. The assignments are pretty limited, and the real time should be spent having the experience. Okay, then the final thing here on the syllabus is that it's pass-fail. Okay? So when all is said and done, you submit your stuff. If you submitted it and it's what's supposed to be, then you pass, and that's it. Okay? Now I'm going to stop sharing, and Alix, should we entertain some questions now, or do you want to say some stuff first?
Maybe I can say a couple of things. I was taking some notes while you were talking. One, just about the second product that you were just talking about right now. If in your APE, your role was to actually write a report about something, like that can be the second product, right? Like you don't need to rewrite something else. If your APE already had deliverables, you can just show those deliverables.
Yes, absolutely. That's the ideal.
So basically, I wanted to, a little bit later, like after we have questions, I'm going to share a few other tips and explain what I'll be doing to support your search. But two important things, what Professor Schuster and Green told us last year, and I'll repeat it this year, is to be open-minded. You might have like a real desire to get a certain kind of experience, and it might just not happen that way. I think even more so this year with the situation, but it's not just about the situation. When you start working with an organization, you never know exactly how it's going to be. And here also, as a kind of intern volunteer, you don't have a lot of power. You know, you're going to have to see what happens. They told us a story about a girl in a previous cohort who went to Nepal and thought she was going to be working on health related things and ended up teaching English. And she still learned things, but it was different, and she made the most of it. And so, you know, in general, I would say take that approach, both once you've started, but also in your search. So what they also told us last year, and I'll repeat it, is don't spend months and months trying to search for like the ideal experience. If you see an opportunity that looks reasonable, maybe that doesn't sound exciting, but that looks reasonable, something doable, go for it, you know, and you'll probably learn something, you'll probably enjoy. Yeah, even if it's not like your exact, it's not, you're not looking for a job, right? Like you're looking for a short-term experience. And I would say, so that all the more with the COVID situation, which might make it a little bit harder to find things. But I think it is possible. You guys know it in advance this time, so it's a little bit better. And a lot of it can be done online as well. So you don't have to go on site. There are a lot of organizations that you can work online with, including part of the teamwork. You know, most organizations these days, their teams are meeting online and that kind of thing. So you can still be connected with the team and still contribute and do all that online, or online and in person, or only in person, you know, let just see. But I'm just re-emphasizing that you should be flexible. And then the last thing from my side for now is you can also do your own project. So when we talk about examples of what people did, I think we can mention at least one of those. If you have an idea about a project that you'd like to carry out, you could do that too. And then it wouldn't be like with a host organization. Maybe subject to, I mean, all of them should be subject to approval by Professor Schuster, but that may be even more, just to check that it's, you know, fulfill the requirements.
Just to add, to re-emphasize one thing that Alik said, if you set your expectations low enough, then you'll have a good experience, okay? If you're expecting this sort of fantastic experience, life-changing experience, then you may be frustrated with this. And as it turns out, whatever you do, if you're out working for a government agency or an NGO or a hospital or a clinic or whatever it is, Magen David Adam, you'll learn plenty, okay? It may be good, it may be bad, but you'll learn a lot. So just when you get into it, just you're in it, and then make the most of it, okay? All right, I think, Alexa, why don't we take some questions and then we can go over the some of the ones that people have done before, okay? Alex, yeah.
Alex? Okay. Not that I am thinking of doing independently, but if we were to do a project independently, could we work together?
Yeah, but you have to have clearly defined differences in what you're doing. But yes, we've had students work in the same place at the same time. For sure, with the ILE, and Professor Green can comment on that, we really don't want people working as teams on the ILE. It's your project to do for the ILE. For the APE, if two people are in the same place at the same time, it's okay. You just have to just explain what you did. So yes, it's okay. In fact, just to bring up one other thing, some organizations in Israel will only want Hebrew speakers. And if you team up with a Hebrew speaker, maybe you can participate with your classmate handling the language issues. Okay. Some years ago, we had two students who worked in Jazir al-Zarqa. Am I pronouncing that right? And one is Swiss, and the other was, I think, maybe it was Rania. I don't know. But anyhow, so they did it together. Or maybe it was Mesa Manfred. It doesn't matter, okay? One was Arabic speaking and the other English speaking. So that's actually a good reason for people to team up. Okay, other questions? Anything? Okay.
I have a question about the competencies. So I remember we did the competency survey a few weeks ago, but I can't remember like specifically what was on that. Is there a place those are listed that we can refer to just to make sure we're hitting 5?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We can send you that. It's actually, thanks, Katie. Because the program, and this is part of what the accrediting organization wants us to do, we're supposed to make you competent in 32 different fields. And so it's a good idea for you to know what those competencies are. We're going to ask you again at the end of the year. You have to list competencies for your ILE as well. So knowing what those competencies are and sort of tracking it and saying, oh yeah, you know, I got that in class and that was good. And now I got this competency in this one. So yeah, Alex, let's make sure we send the competencies out to everybody.
I just uploaded it to the drive, the Google Drive.
Okay, good, thank you.
So it's on there now.
Good,
I think it says ILE, but it's the same competencies for
right.
all of them.
Yeah, 27 of them are required, and then I think 5 we've cooked up ourselves. Global health and leadership. The global health ones come primarily from WHO.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
If you already work or volunteer in some organization or a team or something like that, do you recommend doing a new thing, or do you recommend doing, like, if it's appropriate to do the thing you're already doing?
So we're very liberal with what we count, Ophir. And so technically you could say, I'm already doing this. I'm just going to report on it. Although frankly, I would discourage that because you want to have a good learning experience. Okay. Now, what you could do is you could stay in the same organization and do something different. And that can be very interesting to do. Okay. Because you're so used to doing this. Now you're going to do that. Okay, and you'll look at it very differently. Okay, so you can stay in the organization, do something different, or go someplace else. Okay, either way. Many years ago, when I started the program in Ohio, we had a lot of people working in what we in Israel would call the Ministry of Health. We had a rule that was you could work in the Ministry of Health, but not in your own district. Okay. So you couldn't ask your boss, because these were people who were working often, couldn't ask your boss if they could just sign off on work you were otherwise doing. You had to find somebody else in a different place. And that was our rule. We don't have a rule per se with that for our program here, but just in principle. Okay, good question over here.
I think Kate has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Kate, sorry.
Yes. You mentioned that it's possible to divide your hours between different projects. Does that mean different organizations? I'm not thinking I would want to do that just to be a good steward of their time and a good investment for their team, but would that be acceptable?
Yes, yeah, you can work in 2 completely different organizations. And I mean, a lot of times when that happens, people start something and it just doesn't work, right? For any of a variety of reasons. So they just leave it and start something new. Although other people, they just want to do 2 things, and that's fine. Or you can do 2 things in the same organization. I mean, it's, as you can see, I'm saying yes to almost everything, right? Because we're we're very open about what's happening here. We want you to have an experience out in public health.
Thank you.
Does that help you, Kate?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
I think I'll make just one comment. You could probably work with an organization almost online. I mean, a lot of it probably that's what probably will be done, but it could be even an organization outside of Israel. So you could technically link up with an organization where you would be working with them. I guess probably it would be largely data analysis and preparing documents and so on, but dealing with some kind of topic. I guess there's so much preoccupation with COVID now that you probably, there'd be lots there, but it could be something else as well. So if you do have an organization or could be a ministry of health as well in another country where you link up and you actually do something with them, I think that would be okay, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That would be fine.
Alex actually sent a list out from the UN of volunteer activities that you could sign up to do. And if they have any sort of vague connection to healthcare, that's good enough. And I clicked on a few of them, and they're asking people to do just what we're talking about, and that would all be online. I mean, ideally, without COVID-19, we would want you in the community doing this stuff. Okay, I mean, ideally, that's what we would like. But it's not going to happen certainly in the winter. As most of you have probably heard, Pfizer announced 2 days ago, I guess it was 2 days ago, that they have an effective vaccine. And I'm sitting in the presence of an international expert on vaccines. I'm not the one who should be talking about this. But one of the commentators that I heard said, 90% effective in who? And how do you define effective? Does it decrease deaths, hospitalizations, severity of illness, infectability? Well, we don't know yet, okay? And who? Is it going to be effective in people who need it or people who don't need it? So I think we're going to have a long winter. And so planning somehow or other to do your APE without physically being on site is probably a good approach to take. Manfred, do you want to respond to that?
No, I think that's fine. I think, you want to really, as Richard said, you're finding something in the community is the best, but if you're very strong in data analysis or writing policy reports or something, you may well be able to find a group that would be interested in having you work with them. So that would be fine.
One more comment to make that comes to mind, excuse me. The accrediting people do not want you to become a research slave for a faculty member, okay? So they've been very clear in saying what you need is an experience that benefits you. And so they don't encourage, I'm going to be careful with how I say this, they don't encourage university-based research. They encourage community-based activities. Now, with that said, some of our students have done projects for professors, okay? Elad, where's Elad? I can't see you on the screen. You're someplace or other. He's just set something up like this, okay? That's fine, okay? So if you want an academic experience and it's going to be meaningful to you, then that's fine. But it needs to be meaningful to you, not just you're serving somebody's research needs, okay? So if you find somebody at the university, that's okay, all right? But it should be because you want to learn how universities do things. So it becomes kind of your community experience by working at a university, okay?
So, Professor Schuster?
Yeah.
I think it would be good now if we can show the Excel file.
Yeah.
And then people can continue with questions. Just ask us, guys, as they come along.
Okay. Let me see if I have it right here. I think it's the APE Ideas and Networks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think before showing what other students did, I'd like to show the other two tabs first.
Okay. Okay, so just a second here. Okay. So Elise, is this what you want?
Yeah, can you go to the last tab?
The one that says APE intro?
Oh no, the one that says Israeli organizations. So Professor Schuster sent this to you yesterday, I think, and I have a slightly more up-to-date version that I'll put on the drive after we talk today. Like Professor Schuster said, it's really your responsibility to set things up, but we still want to give you some support within, our capabilities. So this is part of it. So here you'll see a number of Israeli organizations that could be interesting potentially. And on the F column, no, the E column, you can also see if we actually have a contact with that organization, like one of us or an alumni, making it potentially easier to reach out to them. Once it'll be on the drive, it would be nice if the Israelis could add some organizations that they think could be interesting. Because, this isn't a full list, and I'm sure that you guys know of some interesting organizations. I say Israel, you can do ones abroad, but if we start making a list of interesting organizations all over the world, it's going to be a very long list. So that's more up to you, to find. But since many of you don't live in Israel, we thought it would be helpful to have a list, a starting place to sort of like look at some Israeli organizations. And then if you can go to the personal connections tab, that's a little bit similar, but a little bit different. This is a list of places where we have personal connections and we can make direct introductions. At this point, they're mostly mine. Professor Schuster and Professor Green can add some, although I think that as far as I remember last year, when Professor Green finds out about an opportunity, he'll tend to tell you in class, saying, hey, I just heard about someone who's maybe looking for someone could be interesting. But like this, so all of these are not in Israel, but again, it's just to kind of help expand your network if you see things that seem interesting to you. And yeah, we don't know for sure if these organizations are interested in having interns or volunteers, but we can at least, put you in touch with them. And then the other tab is what past students have done. And there, I think, Professor Schuster, you can highlight a bit, maybe a few that just to illustrate a little bit.
Yeah. These are in order of the years of the students, which is not necessarily, what should I say, special. It's just easier for us, okay? So we can go back to the first year. Sylvia, who's now a psychiatry resident, worked in community mental health, and she was actually working for a professor at the university, okay? I'm not going to go through all of these, to say the least. You can see many of them are in Israel. Davy Ron went back to New York. She's now a medical student, actually, but she went back and worked in New York. Salome Dahan did stuff in Montreal and in Israel. Here are the two who were here in Israel at Jazeera al-Zarqa. Let's keep going here. Julianne Esselbrug. Lauren, I did contact her because I think you were interested in finding out about Nepal, right? And did I write back to you? I think so. If I didn't, let me know, okay?
Yeah, we did talk about it.
Yeah, Yeah, so I mean, you know, our alumni can help you and make connections for you. And Alix and Daphne have both worked to try to bring our alumni closer to our current students. And so if you see something you want to find out, certainly let us know. Okay. Some people, well, most of the projects end up being in Israel, as you can see. Okay. Now, if you look here, Alix and Juan both did online stuff. This is last year. Okay. Gabby Smith, who's from South Africa, did her work somehow or other in South Africa. Nicole had an opportunity in Banja Luka that Manfred had arranged. So that's it. And we still have some people who haven't finished.
Yeah, but the one that I'll put up in the drive is more up to date.
Yeah.
More of these are filled in.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, yes. Okay. All right. So more questions. Alix, you want to go over anything more with this?
I'll just mention that, so after we have our LinkedIn workshops, we will promote on LinkedIn that we have 20 smart students that are looking for placements. Like I'll reach out also to my connections and see if organizations like come to us saying, well, you know, that sounds interesting. I'd like you to tell your students that we're looking for someone. We don't know whether we can expect a big response from that. So that's why you shouldn't depend on that. You don't need to wait until that happens to start looking. But if it happens to be that in that way we find 2 organizations and help make 2 matches, then it's already worth it, you know? So we'll be doing that after the LinkedIn workshop.
Kate, looks like you have a question.
Yes, Alix, I'm curious, from your cohort, did the majority of the students do their APEs during February or throughout the year? And then the second part of my question maybe is for Professor Green. This is completely uninformed, but just like my taxi driver the other day, he said that he thought that there'd probably be another lockdown in February because of Bibi's trial. So I'm just curious if there, I know it's completely, but I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts on if we wait to February, if that would not, if to do it in Israel, if that would, there's a good chance of a lockdown, any idea?
I'll answer the first part. So only one student, I think, did it in February last year. Others did it throughout semester 2 as well as 3. And yeah, before Professor Green gives his opinion on lockdown, again, a lockdown shouldn't prevent you necessarily, you know, because every organization continues to work. They just have to find other ways. So it makes things a little different, but it shouldn't stop you fully, I think. And just one thing that I wanted to highlight, if you can go back to the Israeli organizations tab, that's maybe more for Hebrew speakers, but maybe not. Just one interesting thing that I wanted to mention. Can you go to the top? There's a movement called Tnuat Misparaim that it's like a public-led contact tracing initiative. So it's not government-led, it's people in the public that decided that they wanted to do contact tracing. I don't know if it's a good or a bad organization, like no opinion on that, but it could be something interesting for someone to look into. They're looking for volunteers, they're looking for part-time contact tracers, and even just kind of like analyzing what they're doing from a public health perspective, and having a little insight into how that works in combination with the Ministry of Health or something like that could be something really interesting. I just wanted to highlight that one. Professor Green, so lockdowns. Do you have a glass ball, a crystal ball?
Like everybody, it's going to be a bumpy road, as they say. We can expect cases to go up substantially in the winter, one way or the other. And so I guess it's going to be a question of to what extent there'll be limitation. But it looks like there's going to be an on and off kind of situation for quite a while. Again, and we'll talk about this in the workshops. Where is the payoff? What do we do? How many cases do we tolerate? How much pressure on the system do we tolerate? And how many deaths do we tolerate? This is basically the part of the decision-making process. So I would pretty much think that during the winter, we're going to be at a high risk of at least partial kind of lockdowns. So I mean, to work out that, even now, I guess it's quite difficult to actually go to organizations. So we really have to be creative about doing some of this stuff online. So I guess that's really going to be the process. I think Alex will be watching this very carefully, and we'll be sitting together to see how we can best help you guys. But I think we should be ready for a really complicated kind of situation.
Thank you. That's helpful.
You might want to join the groups who are trying to vaccinate people, so that if there's a vaccination, that'll be a good project.
I think the hardest thing is deciding what you want to do and just getting it to happen. But with that said, we have always had our students get their APE and get it done somehow. Okay, it always, like at this time of year, I get palpitations because I say, how are we going to find this? How are we going to help people? And then as the year goes on, it turns out people do work it out. Okay, they do. Everybody does somehow or other. And again, if you set your expectations low enough, okay, then it works. Okay, and by saying low enough, I'm not trying to diminish it, but it turns out, again, you can learn from almost any experience like this. Okay, so don't try to make it perfect. Just try to get it to happen. And for those people who are still overseas, Sebastian and Liat and I guess Justin, right? I would say try to get it going now, and in something that you can begin now and then finish from Israel. That's what I would say. And certainly you can be in touch with us when you have your ideas to, check in and see if we think they're good ideas or if we can help you. And really, it's the three of us, okay? Obviously, I am the least of the three. Unfortunately, I'm the least of the three of us who knows about organizations in Israel, okay? I just, by definition, I don't. So I'm happy to try to help, but Alex is learning and is really working on this. And obviously, Professor Green has the most contacts, so, okay?
One final thing, and that is the situation, in a sense, has provided opportunities. And this is the question is, how do we use them? There are numerous working groups now, related obviously to COVID, but in many areas of it. And these are working groups that meet regularly, allocate jobs to the people in the groups, and then people go away and we meet again every few days. So I'm sitting on quite a few of these groups, and we often need help. We need somebody who take on part of it. So you take part in the discussions, or you sit in on the discussions, and you also provide something. In other words, you take a particular task. So I haven't seen any of the groups actually utilizing students in that sense. In other words, taking a student who'll sit in. I must mention that one of the problems maybe for you is that it restricts you, in the sense that you really have to commit yourself to be in that group for a certain period of time at a certain period of time. You can't really say, well, I'll join that group and I'll come and sit in when I can. And if I've got if I've given a job, I'll try and do it the next day or so, but it may take me 3 weeks. Well, that's not going to work, because it doesn't really help in these kind of work. So that's the kind of situation where you really have to say, okay, I'm going to be joining this group now for 2 months, whatever it is, 2 meetings a week. And if I'm given a task, I have to actually get it done immediately. So that's a kind of a consideration. Certainly interesting. So I can give you lots of examples. I don't know whether you want to hear about examples now, but I'll just give you a very quick one. We're looking at the diagnostic tests, these rapid diagnostic tests or point of care tests for COVID-19, and trying to assess the validity of these tests and in which way should they be tested in order to make sure that they're valid, and then what do we do with the false positives and negatives and so on. So we've got a small working group on that. And then each one of us is given a task to actually go and look at what's going on in the field and what kind of analyses we need to do and what analysis should be done and what we should be requesting from the manufacturers and so on and so on. So that's just an example of a working group. You'd have to think of, well, where would somebody, the student coming in, but for example, we just got a task today, which has to be completed in 2 days, basically. I mean, that's the kind of time scale where one of us has to try and get information, do whatever calculations, and then come back to the group in 2 days' time. That doesn't happen all the time, but what I'm saying is, if you're going to take it on, then you know that that's it. You've taken it on and you've got a deadline. So it may interest some of you, so we can talk about it later.
Many people in the healthcare field see MPH students as having quantitative skills, And so that may scare you all right now to think that the rest of the world looks at you and believes that you have quantitative skills, but you are getting them. And so you may be asked to take on a task of analyzing numbers or taking data, and that would be good to do. Or maybe it will be qualitative. They'll ask you to write a policy position on something, okay? But don't hesitate to take on a project for an organization that requires some quantitative analysis. That would be very good for you, because all of a sudden, what you're learning in epidemiology and biostatistics takes a whole different meaning if you actually have to do something with it, okay? So don't run away from it if someone asks you to do that. Okay, we've got maybe 2 more minutes because we need to give you a break before Professor Green's course. So anything else? One or two, maximum 2 more questions. Anything? Okay, then I think we'll stop. Again, stay in touch with us, please. I think that's a key thing to do. And as I think you all know, I'm in the States, but you can set up a time to talk to me just as easily, okay? And I know Alix and Professor Green are both, as willing as I am to help you with this stuff, okay?
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna say goodbye.
Okay.
You have class with Professor Green in 15 minutes, and I'll see you all in 2 hours and 15 minutes with Mike Sage, who, I sent his biography to all of you, right? I mean, he has had, like his wife, an incredible career at CDC. I mean, he's really done a lot of pretty impressive stuff. For those of you who are US citizens, he runs the Global Health Fellowship and has said to me he'd love to have some of our students applying. If you're not a US citizen, I don't think you're eligible. But you can look into that. I don't think he's going to talk about that today, although we can ask him to talk a little bit about it. Okay, everybody, very good. I'm going to, Alix, anything more you want to say?
No, just let us know if you need help.
Okay, Professor Green, anything?
That's it.
Okay, everybody, good. All right, have a good vaccine class.
See you guys soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much.